Good evening. I'd like to call the study session of North Augusta City Council for Monday, August the 14th, 2023 to order. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our City Administrator, Mr. Jim Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For tonight's study session, we have three items. One, the City Council agenda review. Second is department details. And then lastly, the mayor's matters, which will have the draft development code update, along with one request that I have as the administrator for council. So if I can, I'll move right into the agenda. This is going to be a very thin agenda, and it's going to get thinner. I think Tommy is going to walk through the planning development code update, and so we're planning on removing item number 5, which is ordinance number 2023-15, adopt the development code, because we have to have a public hearing prior to doing so. So that one is going to get slid to the next city council meeting, but Tommy's going to cover that a little more in depth in the focus items. And then the next item we have under administration, resolution number 2023-32, which is ARPA request number 8, will likely slide as well. We have a final reference call with one of our IT contractors regarding our financial software. So we're going to be having a conference call with another city manager and his staff before we want to go forward on this software item. So as we've discussed before, this would be an initiative to move forward to a better digital experience for our customers. You know, at the end of every calendar year, we end up shutting down the online finance system to reconcile the books, which is a very analog and antiquated way of doing things, but that's the best they can do with the current systems that we have. And so I think we're probably the most mature right now as far as our next ARPA request, which is that financial system. But again, we're going through our due diligence. We don't just take the contractor's word for it. We talk to other cities that are implementing those systems and see what their experience is, and the feedback we've gotten to date so far has been pretty good, but we do want to do one last final diligence check before moving forward on that. So that ARPA request will likely slide 2 weeks as well, and I think what we'll be replacing these with are potentially some deeds of dedication, through the planning department for that. So I know it's a thin-looking document here for the summer, but that's what we're looking at for the upcoming agenda, and I'll pause for any questions from council members. Okay. We'll go ahead and move into department details, and first off is finance with Linda.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. 2 short things this week. Cycle 1 customers will experience a disconnect on Wednesday and Thursday this week. That's August 16th and 17th. And then our Cycle 2 customers will have a due date on Friday, August 18th. That's it for me tonight.
Thank you, Linda.
I can also add, both for Linda and Tom, been working a joint project for us, and one of the things that we've talked about last year was making some improvements to the building standards and finance lobby. And so we had a contractor come in and do an assessment for us in the lobbies. And ultimately what we're looking to do is move forward on a proposal when we receive it to enclose parts of that lobby with glass and teller-style windows for the safety of the employees that are working downstairs, both in building standards and finance. So that's starting to move forward. It does not require any future council action because you allocated the money for facility improvements at the end of last year. Just wanted to let you know that that's still moving forward. With that, I'll move over to public services with James Hutton.
Good evening. This week, property maintenance will be working in Arbor Place and various areas of the city, pruning low-lying limbs. We've had some reports of limbs that are hanging kind of low. That's interrupted the traffic flow for some of the school buses and such. Anybody who notices any low limbs, broken limbs that look like they may cause some kind of property damage or just need to be looked at, please call Public Services and we'll get someone out to look at them for you. That also goes for any overgrowth that's in the roadway that may obstruct the line of traffic or at intersections. Meriwether Drive, we discovered a wastewater defect on a main at a manhole. We anticipate that the crews will be out next Monday making that repair. That road will have to be closed to through traffic for a day or two, and we'll get that taken care of and get the system back in order. Today was our first day of blue bin collection. I will get a report back from the superintendent. I talked to him various times during the day. It seemed to be going well. We'll have some numbers and be able to tell about the usage rates and the volume and the weights that we're getting from the containers that process through our recycling facility. We do anticipate that we are going to have a good number of people utilize them, and like with any program, we're going to have ones that don't, but we encourage people to utilize them. It helps. It keeps the rates down. There's no best program out there. We used the blue bags for a while. They are no longer usable. The bags themselves are not recyclable. We don't have a market for them, so there's no, we can't, work for years, but there's no market for it, so we don't want to give out a collection item that winds up in a landfill itself. The second cheapest method was the blue bins without a substantial rate increase with other alternative collection methods. But again, we encourage people to utilize the blue bins. In the event that you didn't get a blue bin, please call Public Services and we'll get you some brought out. Thank you.
James, just want to say thank you for your folks. There's a lot of traffic down between Dr. Velke and Jackson Square. People turning on the main street from Buena Vista, and that hedge has really started growing. So I don't know if you'd ever get down there, but it had been cut back wonderful.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you.
I'll let them know. Thank you.
Yep.
Next up is Tommy Paradise from Planning and Development.
And again, this month, the Planning Commission is not going to have a meeting. We do anticipate one next month, though.
You're still getting paid, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Next up, Chief
I need to
Thomas
look into that.
and Public Safety.
Good evening. One of the things we've talked about was Smart Cop. We've been talking about it for a long time, but the data conversion has taken a long time because we've got so much conversion to come over. So we're in that process, and then the go-live date will be August the 30th. We've got some training to do in that regard. And then last week, we held promotions for our CID sergeant, who is now Jason Fox, and Melanie Chavis, who is our new school resource officer sergeant. So we're glad and I'm proud of those folks in that process. I didn't have this information this morning, but we applied for state accreditation, filled out the application last week, and was accepted again over this afternoon. So it's just another layer of protection for us. Not as much work as we had to do with the national, but kind of a state-specific. So we're very proud to be involved and engaged in that also.
Sergeant Fox took the position when Officer Sherman became captain, right?
Yes, sir. That's what.
And Officer Chavis is now over all of the resources
Yes, sir.
in every school. Perfect.
Every school. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Sergeant Fox is listening. Tell him welcome back home. I know Jason started out here, I think, probably not long after we were 21, so it's good to have him back.
All right, over to Rick for PRT.
First item is the grill at Creighton Park was stolen. Unfortunately, we probably will not be able to file an insurance claim on that because it's less than $1,000, but just so you know, in case you're contacted, we will be working to replace that grill. Literally bolted to a steel pole.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can't even, I'm trying to visualize.
Yes, they went to quite the effort to take that grill.
This is like the ones like you see up at the lake, the big.
That's
Yeah.
That's correct.
Maybe weld it to the pole this time.
Yes, that might be the right idea.
That blows my mind.
Yes. Water's Edge Aluminum out of Plum Branch, South Carolina, has been contracted to fabricate and install the new bridge to the villages at Riverview. The Streets and Drains crew will assist by installing the footings for the bridge. Project timeline is approximately 6 weeks. Streets and Drains crew also did some other work for us. They took care of the demolition of the dugouts, existing concrete block dugouts at Riverview Park Fields 1 and 2, and we're working on bids to secure a contractor to install some new open-air dugouts, which will be a lot cooler for our folks. Those block dugouts have been there since the 70s, I think, so it was time for them to go. I think they literally almost demoed themselves and fell over. And the last piece that I got today, too, just so you know, on the boat ramp dock, the cleats for that ramp, the boat dock have been ordered. Welder's going to have to remove the existing ones that are busting up, and then he'll put the new cleats in place.
Is that going to be finished by Ironman, or what's the timeline for the dock?
Yes, by Ironman, because that's September.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Councilman, just to be clear, we're talking about the dock over by the water treatment plant, not the new boat dock that's going down by the amphitheater. All right, next up is, and actually to your point, Councilwoman, I believe in our previous conversations with the Ironman organization, they have a temporary, dock situation that they'll float out there, and they're tracking that there's not going to be a fixed dock to attach to. At least that's my understanding, and that the goal is for us to have and I'll cover this a little bit later in my comments, is to have the dock portion of our project completed by next summer, specifically for our boaters to be able to use it during the summertime, and also to tie into the Ironman if they choose to use North Augusta yet again. With that, I'll turn it over to Tom Zeser for Engineering and Public Works.
It's not on my list here, but as a companion piece to Rick's grill story, last weekend we had some vandals attempt to remove one of the light poles on the fourth floor of the parking deck, and fortunately they were able to remove 3 of the 4 anchor bolts, and had they got the 3rd one off, I'm not sure where that pole would have ended up, but anyway.
That is unbelievable.
So as an update to the
Guess they want some light while they're grilling. I mean, I don't know.
maybe yeah, they need it.
Goodness gracious.
As update to the Woodlawn Avenue, what I call the Woodlawn Avenue slope failure. Again, this is the area on West Woodlawn, just west of Lake Avenue intersection, where the barrels have been out for several months now. We have an approximately 50-plus foot high embankment that has sheared off and has jeopardized not only a large storm drain, but the sidewalk and actual roadway. So anyway, we've been working a couple different approaches on that, but last week I met with the DOT and a contractor who they have on retainer under their emergency services contracts, and he has put together a proposal to remediate that slope failure, and so we are reviewing that proposal together with the DOT. We're not really sure what the ask is going to be from the DOT, but it's probably going to be the larger portion of it, just because most of that work is outside the DOT's right-of-way. So hopefully we will be bringing a request to you in the very near future to get something underway on that.
Thank you for the update. That's very good.
On a much simpler problem, there was a small sinkhole at the intersection of Lake Avenue and West Pine Grove. Streets and Drains did address that today, and hopefully we'll get a permanent patch on the road in the next day or two. And then lastly, next Monday, Streets and Drains and with cooperation with the Public Services Department will do the demolition of the 1711 Plank Road residence that the city took title to several weeks ago from Aiken County. So we hopefully will have that code issue remediated here in the next week.
Thanks for all you do, Tom.
All right, Tom. Next over to Kayla from HR.
Good evening. Along with our normal employment opportunity list, we have a job fair on the 24th. SC Works is putting that on, and myself and Mary Bradley, our new HR generalist, is going to be there, alongside our public safety recruiting team.
All right, that closes out our second item, and the last item will go into the focus items. And so I'll have Tommy Paradise have a discussion with you all about the draft development code. Then I've got some updates immediately following Tommy. So Tommy, I turn it over to you.
This is, can you go to the next slide? The August 14th is where we're at here. This is the path forward. Study council review. And I'm not for sure what all that is going to entail from y'all. I'm just kind of hanging on. Talked to the city attorney over the weekend, and he said we needed to do a public hearing before we had the first reading. It would be a lot better to do. So that's why the first reading was proposed to take off the agenda next week. And there's a couple of different ways we can handle that going forward. We had the public hearing scheduled for September the 11th, which is a work session. And we can have moved from there into a called meeting and have the first reading. Or you could have the work session, public hearing, the work session, and then have the first reading on September the 18th, and then the second reading on October the 2nd. The first, the thing is do you finish on the 18th or do you finish on the 2nd? Go to the next one, please. But this is a curveball, again, talking with Kelly, that I did not realize was in there. So if there is any changes that council wants to make before you adopt the code, and you're going to get lots of input, those are required by state law to go back to the planning commission and get a recommendation, either pro or con, and then come back to y'all. So that can add to, if that happens, that is certainly going to add to the calendar of events. Next one. And then this is one that I had mentioned that we will be recommending whether we do this as a text amendment after y'all adopt it, or if we, if you're sending it back to the Planning Commission for other revisions to include in. But basically, we left out the paragraph that said what articles were waivers and what articles were variances. And so the consultant went back and reviewed what was waivers now and what was variances now and lined those two up so it's still consistent. The term revenue neutral comes to mind. It's still equal. And go ahead, I think that's my last slide. The other thing is you've got some comments that I know was emailed to y'all. I know Jason's here. And there's been one email with public comments that I've given to Jamie that at some point she'll forward to y'all. What kind of questions do y'all have for me?
Let me just jump in first and just say that this without thinking further, and we aren't making a decision tonight, but we've waited a number of years for this. So personally, for me, it doesn't concern me that we're pushing the ordinance, the vote on first or second reading out a little bit. And if we get good information that we need to bring it back for planning commission, so be it. As far as for me personally, I don't have a problem. It doesn't make your life any easier. I know you're ready to put it to bed. I don't blame you, but we're close to the end here, so we need to make sure we finish it correctly. So that's just my personal. I don't know what anybody else thinks.
I agree, and I honestly would kind of want to hear public comments. I don't know if it's public comments, and then we could have a study session after that, and then to a meeting. I personally, because I feel like after looking through it, I'd rather hear from other people that have specific issues, and then kind of have the time frame to process that before a vote.
That's kind of what I was going to suggest too. I know, Jason, you had sent an email, and, honestly, I'm not a developer, so a lot of the terms, I would rather let's have just a study session on it or a public input session or whatever, so that these guys have an opportunity to explain it to us. When it comes to like financial stuff, I look to Kevin or the mayor, and so we need y'all's expertise. I mean, a lot of this stuff is pretty cut and dry, but some of it may be beneficial to look at. Again, I mean, it's a huge thing. I'm not a developer. It doesn't really affect me personally. I'm an electrical contractor, so it doesn't really affect me. It might affect somebody like David, but I would rather hear from those guys because, I mean, I'm sure there's some specifics that would affect them positively or negatively. And, I mean, again, we've waited on this, 3 years, almost 4 now, since we've been talking about this. And so a few more days or a couple weeks, I think we need to try to make it as good as possible. I mean, obviously, somebody's going to find something that I'm sure you're going to come back to us in the future, Tommy, saying, well, it read this, and, we're going to have to make that decision. But, I agree with Jen and the mayor. We should just, take our time and get the input so that, we can make better decisions.
So, well, you got any different, so right now, we think that, September 11th would be a public hearing,
Yes, sir.
and then, September the 18th would be the possibly first proposed ordinance, unless we need to have, we got time there, so we need to decide based on the questions, whatever, do we even do another study session? But I think September 11th would not be a proposed reading at all, it would be just strictly public hearing.
Correct. Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. And let me know when you're ready to get into it.
Well,
You ready?
I'm
Okay.
kind of, that was kind of it for me, unless y'all have questions. I went through it, the other week, last week, with all the changes and everything. I can go back through that for you, but I'm looking for questions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I got a lot of them for you.
Okay?
So let me ask you, this will help. Is the introduction piece and recommendations, that is strictly for us now? Well, that will not be that will not be part of the development code, right?
Correct.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I got a few things I can ask you about that later. Okay. So I'm going to jump in first, and let me preface this by saying I want to thank Kevin, David, y'all did a lot of work on this. The committee, the Mayor Pettit put in place, did a lot of work. Tommy, you and your folks, countless hours over it. So, and this is really good. Very impressed by what the consultants did. Fantastic. I will tell you, I'll have 3 basic things. One are going to be maybe a few nitpicking things I want to bring out. 2, there will be some of my questions. I'll just preface, kind of like what Eric said, my education level, my ignorance on certain terminology, maybe things you can just clarify for me, okay? So I'm going to ask some questions that probably for everybody else here sounds real simple, but for me it just doesn't resonate. And then I think I've got some questions that I think we would need possibly some conversation and feedback. So is that fair?
Would you,
Okay.
boss?
All right. All right. So, that's the other thing you do when you start working on this, and then the next thing you know, you get, okay, there's a big section on non-conforming structures, and this is on page 11. So when it says on the bottom of that number,
Is that what?
you almost sit down. So on page 11, the bottom, under non-conforming structures, item 2, where it says reconstruction limited in general, it says Non-conforming structures allowed if a permit's issued within 6 months from the time of damage or notice of wear, and shall be completed within 12 months of the issuance of that. Otherwise, a non-conforming structure shall not be rebuilt, altered, or repaired following accidental damage. If there's a building downtown that somebody wants to renovate and bring up the code that was not an accidental damage or notice, I mean, is that saying that couldn't be done?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, so that's, if lightning hit that building and it burned down, then it would apply.
Okay, so that's just, okay, good, okay, thank you, that was one of them.
But is there a percentage that determines that, or that means it has to be completely destroyed?
No, it is, if it's non-conforming, what was that section? Because I was looking at the
It's
page.
section 3.4 on the bottom of page 11.
3.4.
Item 3.4.1, number 2.
This doesn't have, some ordinances does have a percentage on there. This one does not. But, so, basically, I would be looking at, is it a minor repair? I would be looking, to be honest, from my interpretation part, I'd be looking at a 50% rate as far as something like that.
Would that be a determination made by Mark in building standards, or, because that could open a can of worms there. I kind of see where Britton's coming from, depending on who's fixing it. No, this isn't 50%. Yes, it is.
I would go toward the county tax assessment.
Yeah.
And what do they say the building's worth?
And if the repairs are, well, and let's be honest, even if a house burns to the ground right now, it's going to be more to build it than it is. It's just, that's open to a lot of interpretation, so I kind of agree with Britton on that one.
But the way this looks right now, it could be strictly interpreted that you couldn't build any of it back. That's, and I don't know that that's what, it comes back to what you want. And I don't know that that is what you want. And of course, I'm sitting here thinking,
I mean, I don't disagree with you. I mean, there's some buildings here that if they were gone, okay, we can build it back looking better. But if it's something historic, let's just say like Lookaway Hall, for instance.
What got me thinking was back in the day when the Sprint Gas had looked at having to shut down for a period of time to renovate, if they were going to do that. That wasn't done by accident, that's their choice. So I just want to make sure I understood, you're talking about the accidental piece. That was my clarification, yeah. Perfect, I'm not, yeah. Okay, all right. I think the article section 4 is fantastic, Tommy. Especially the way you talk about each of the zoning districts, I think that's fantastic. I guess my question is, I'm embarrassed to ask the question, I'm going to. Maybe everybody here knows, when they talk about a lot size, I mean, does everybody know what 14,000 square foot, how big a lot that is? That's about a third of an acre, right? Give or take?
yes, sir.
Yeah, so I didn't know if maybe we want to add, if that's possible, you just do the square footage, and I don't know if that's helpful, but I would think that might be something we might want to add, just approximately a third of an acre.
Oh, I got you.
I'm sorry, I'm on page 22, I apologize.
It took me a minute.
I'm sorry, I jumped ahead on you enough. Let's, yeah.
R14.
Page 22, item, 4, when it says minimum lot size. I mean, Jason knows 14,000 square foot. I actually had to look it up. Just tell you. Approximately a third of an acre, yeah, just an idea,
I got you.
Yeah, or something. I think it might be just something simple. And I wasn't sure on number 5 of that chart where it says, see methods for dimensional measurements, see exceptions for height limitations. I didn't see where the footnote had told me where to go.
There's not one.
Okay.
It doesn't give you the section, and that's a good catch.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Then we're moving to page 30. Again, great description, the downtown mixed-use one, page 30, I was still in Article 4. But I was just wondering, could you maybe, if somebody came up to me and said, yeah, downtown mixed-use District 1, is there a way to maybe put some realistic pictures of really what that is? Versus this, I mean, this is nice to have this picture, it's like a drawing, but is that, and it may be somewhere that I'm missing it, and correct me if I am, but if I'm just looking at this first, it doesn't tell me, we're talking about strictly George Avenue, I know, so could we have maybe some pictures a picture that would tell us what that looks like?
Well, as far as George Avenue, that's where you go to the zoning map. Can't look at one without the other. But the pictures depicted here are for downtown dense development. That's what we were trying to get.
No, I'm with you on that. I like the pictures.
But the and I'm trying to, and we specifically didn't put pictures of North Augusta so that we didn't offend anybody or step on any toes. I'm trying to get my head around what kind of pictures are we talking
Well,
about?
what my question is, I don't know downtown mixed use 1, downtown mixed use 2. I can read it, but I don't, there's no visualization from these. I mean, why have the pictures? Because it doesn't, the aerial view doesn't help me personally. It may help someone else. I'm saying, for me, it doesn't help me.
Maybe you could have like an asterisk or something that says C zoning map, and then they reference over to that.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm just not.
I wouldn't put pictures, period.
Okay.
I mean, well, just because, you know, the codes we have to go through.
Well, I don't mean, okay. I don't know what I'm just saying it
Yeah.
doesn't really help me.
Or, yeah, or kind of like Jen said, see the zoning map or something of that nature, but, I mean, I would try to limit the pictures.
And that will tell
because
me exactly what's part of downtown mixed use 1.
I kind of like that, because when you start adding pictures, well, it looks just like this.
And, you know, as far as the asterisk, that sounds good, but anybody that's using this code, the first thing they need to do is go to the map. Because the map is the driver of what regulations are going to be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's why we're having this discussion. Thank you for clarification.
So you're basically saying that you want to be able to have a better way to,
I just
help
want to
people
know what
understand
downtown
what
mixed
mixed
use
use-
1 is. If I tell some downtown mixed use 1, downtown mixed use 2.
so it'd be.
I've got to go to a map to determine that, because off the top of my head, I couldn't educate.
Could it be
If
better-
I get interviewed tonight, I can't tell her what is in downtown mixed use 1. That's just me.
I understand.
I'm not as smart as everybody. I'm just
So I
saying.
guess what I'm saying is, would it be good for it to say identified by the zoning map, or, I mean, you just say referenced it, but I mean, some kind of terminology like.
And we can certainly put that, something in there if you want to. But whoever is using this book, their first stop should be the map. Or the first question to us should be.
But the example that they kept using was not Jason Winger, but Mary Jo Citizen, who's looking to do something.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying is, and I love this, but Mary Jo Citizen may not know that, I mean, we have people who don't know.
I understand.
Maybe something to consider.
Hey, Britton, and I know where you're coming from too, and again, I mean, this code is intended for the professionals that do this for a living. I mean, that's just like if I handed anybody a copy of the electrical code, y'all are just gonna be like, well, what is this? It's saying to go back here and reference this, and then you gotta flip back over here and do this. This code is no different than a building code, plumbing code, heat and air code, for instance. It is confusing, and that's where, you know, Tommy and the Planning Commission, you know, should be able to help the customers that are wanting to do that. I mean, because unless you do this type of stuff, I mean, it's like me looking at the tax code. I would have been no clue.
So, go to the map. Okay. All right. Page 39. And this is, again, I just need to understand where we are about manufactured residential homes. So, we have had this, and I want to make sure I've got my terminology right. A manufacturing home is like a mobile home, and a modular home is closer to a regular home. Is that
Correct.
So why, if we are not allowing mobile homes in mobile homes and mobile home parks now, I guess what I'm saying is, I'm trying to understand, why do we have this section? It makes it sound like we want and I didn't know we've had this conversation. I don't remember having a conversation that we want someone to build manufactured homes.
You don't, but
Why do we have
we
this in
have the
here?
provision in there, so if somebody comes with that type of housing, they can make the ask. It's more of the fair housing thing. It's like, and I don't mean to say it, but none of us want an adult-oriented business in North Augusta. But we have to have a place to put them, just in case. So same thing here. We've got a provision for it if somebody asks for it. But that doesn't mean y'all gonna adopt it. Or
But
if somebody
you're s-
asks for that zoning, y'all don't have
This
to
is-
approve it.
This is a regulation that requires us to do it? You said it was
Correct.
a
You
fair
would-
housing, okay.
You
great.
would have to, and you would have to zone
Okay.
it that particular district, and there's
Okay.
nothing zoned that now.
Okay, fair housing, that's what I need to know. Thank you. Okay, I'm now on Article 5, Tommy, page 46. So, and again, under, at the bottom, we talks about brew pubs, microbrewery, or micro distillery. Talk to me through why that would be, for example, in the mixed use 1, mixed use 2. We put that as a condition because it gives us a little flexibility of how we want to steer the person.
Well, it puts additional restrictions on it.
Doesn't mean that
It's
we're
a
against
C.
it, it's just that there's more restrictions.
Correct, it's a conditional use. I'm trying to find,
It's on page 46
I'm with you
of
there.
Article 5. On the
But
very
but
bottom.
anyway, when you flip over in the conditional uses, which, as I think about it, maybe we ought to have the section numbers there as well. It will give you specific criteria that microbrewery or that particular use will have to do.
Conditional use, if we could say, go to so-and-so, at the very top where you have the legend, legend.
Well,
Permitted use.
and those are in chapter 5, it's just a matter of which page in chapter 5.
Yeah.
And
won't get to that.
along that same line, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Today, whenever I was going through Jason's comments, and for multifamily and single-family attached and that, he had suggested adding, I think it was 6.4 to it, but basically, there was a typo and there was a P in here where there should have been a C, and multifamily homes already has a design criteria in it that's in the conditional use section.
So when we get to this table, the uses and use conditions, we are required to list everything regardless of whether, so like, for example, you mentioned it, thank you, adult use, okay, pawn shops. I mean, so you're saying we have to list that, and I'm saying, when are we ever going to allow an adult use in industrial? Why even have it, why do we even list it?
So
Why do we have a list of pawn shops? So in my, especially downtown, so that's what I'm trying to, help me explain
And-
how that works.
And if a pawn shop is not allowed, you don't think that's a good idea, that's fine. A lot of these came from the existing code.
That's what I'm saying, so I think adult
And-
use, in my opinion, pawn shops were two that just struck me. I'm thinking, at least for the next 2 years I'm mayor, I don't see ourselves wanting to be, I just can't see us wanting that, quite frankly.
And I'm not gonna say I disagree with you.
Okay.
I'm just saying that it keeps us out of court.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So we have to list it, but I would tell you, I would, for pawn shop, I mean, I shouldn't even be P for industrial. If we're gonna do conditional, it should be, they all should be conditional. On pawn shop.
I would agree.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I don't know, I just thought, but again, if we gotta have it, that's fine, but.
Now, does that change anything that's already existing? Because we do have a pawn shop up across from Tractor Supply.
Grandfather.
Great Deals
Yeah,
Pawn.
oh, yeah. I'm not against, yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, but if we restrict it and then they close down, are
Well,
they?
it's kind of like what we did with the it's like with the check cashing downtown. So when the check cashing place, security, that closes down, no one can put another one of those in there.
So you're talking
that
about
makes it
basically for the
non-conforming.
downtown district, not necessarily anywhere in the city. Right. So the downtown area, I could agree with that on the downtown, but I don't want to say no.
Well, in the downtown, we have pawn shop as a condition. I'm saying.
Yeah, it could be.
Gotta do that. But,
Do you want pawn shop out of downtown?
well,
I mean, I'm asking, that's
I can't.
y'all's ordinance.
Okay, so for me, I don't see any benefit of why we would want a pawn shop downtown. That's me. Whether it's conditional or not, I just don't see it. For me,
I don't know. I mean, if we get too restrictive on what we're going to allow downtown, we may end up with no growth down there. I mean, hopefully we can pick and choose. But I don't want to take it out and say nope, no way, no how. I mean, it could be somebody who's willing to spend some money on a building, fix it up, sell. Well, like the estate jewelry place, would that have been considered a pawn shop because they buy? Obviously they've closed down.
yeah.
So I don't think we should. I mean, if it's all conditional anyway, where it would have to come to us or the planning commission.
No, sir. Remember, a conditional use does not require a public hearing. A conditional use has set criteria in the ordinance that you check off that they have to meet. If they meet that criteria, then they're good.
What I'm saying is, I guess in my mind, and I hear what you're saying, I'm willing, that's a risk of not having business status quo versus putting it in there to get business.
Oh, no, I don't disagree.
We do have it listed.
I know we've got some
listed,
stuff
just
coming.
not in, I think,
Yeah.
we allowed industrial, but I think while we wanted downtown, I just can't.
Now that I can agree with.
The only thing I'll say, if you look at the conditions on that, based on number 2 in the conditions,
What page
could
is
go
that?
anywhere
What page
downtown
you got?
anyway.
What page you
Page
got?
68, pawn shops, 55242. Cannot be located within 300 feet of an existing residential use, residential district, school, public park, or religious institution.
That pretty much
that's-
takes downtown out.
Must be located in that far.
Good catch.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Very good, thank you. Okay.
So leave it in or take it out.
Yeah, you can leave it in. Use what? Guys, we all have a say in this, so.
I mean, from what Kevin just described, I can't imagine anywhere in downtown that you can place it now that's not within 300 feet of the
Church,
things
a
he
park,
just.
a house.
Yeah. I mean, there's nowhere in downtown that you can go that's more than 300 foot from a house.
I mean,
Church.
I tend to go with Eric. I would prefer to be less prescriptive and let the market and the citizens determine whether or not that business ought to be located to a degree. I mean, I know that there've got to be conditions.
I mean,
I'm
we
just
could
not
have
sure.
Rick from Pawn Stars wanting to locate in North Augusta. You never know.
All right, so keep the condition, okay. All right, so let's move to, this goes to one of Jason's comments concerning food trucks. So I hadn't even thought about this. Jason had made a comment that I thought was interesting. He had seen, he was familiar with neighborhoods that did allow food trucks. I'm thinking, if you have you block off a street, like some communities do 4th of July, and you want to pay someone to bring a food truck. I mean, I could see some thoughts on that. So I thought that was a good idea. I don't know what y'all's comments on that.
I would encourage it. I know we had some right there off of Main Street for a while before Cavaliers was there. And there was a couple of trucks doing good business. Somebody from our neighborhood got one of the snow cone, whatever things in our neighborhood. And I mean, they put it on the neighborhood Facebook page. Next thing you know, half the neighborhood's down there. I think we should encourage those types of things now where they can locate. That's kind of difficult, but
Yeah, my only question was like, how hard is it to regulate once you open that up scenario?
I mean, I would think they'd have to have a business license
Well, we
just
got-
like
you're talking about
anybody
they'd have
else.
to go by here, but the question then is, what you're saying is, would you need to add some things that would apply to our neighborhood? Maybe, that's a good point.
I mean, I think they should, I mean, that's no different than an ice cream truck coming through when we were kids, now, except for we don't chase ice cream, we chase the taco truck when we're older. But, I kind of,
So if we want to put it in, what do you need to know from us if we want to add that?
Just tell me to put it in.
Okay.
And then I'll take care of it from there.
Okay.
Or, I think formally, I'll write it up and then y'all can make the changes to what's been presented, but I'll write it up in a memo or something so that you have it, boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
And can vote on it.
All right, so Article 6, page 84. This is another comment Jason made that I thought made sense, was when we list permitted signs, not signs, but permitted fence, we have black vinyl clad chain link, and I think Jason had mentioned, what about galvanized? So y'all know more. What do you
no, I
think
was
on
thinking
that?
out loud. For some reason, I was thinking you couldn't do chain link, but.
You can do
Galvanized
chain
looks
link,
better.
but it's got to be black vinyl clad
Okay.
in this code.
Yeah.
The planning commission talked about it,
Okay.
didn't want to change it, but I can see where, especially in residential, a homeowner hiring a fence company, and then we come by and say, oops, can't do that. Got to be black vinyl clad.
That's kind of a tough one. Because I guess fences could be, some people might not like wood fences, and, that's allowed. So somebody could complain about that. So I think we should just leave, the chain link in. I know a lot of the HOAs will kind of dictate some of that stuff too. But if you look at some of the neighborhoods that don't have HOAs, Hammond Hills, over by the high school, wherever, I guarantee you right around there's chain link everywhere. I would say just keep the galvanized chain link, because
Well, we don't have that in there.
as I was saying, put it in there.
Yeah. That's an additional one.
Or what we could do is omit black vinyl
Yeah.
Okay.
and just allow chain link.
And then if somebody wants the black vinyl, then fine, but yeah,
That's still chain link.
exactly.
Okay. I've got just a couple more really, believe it or not, simple ones before I really get to the elephant in the room with the timing. So I will say that for a little bit. On Article 8, and I was trying to go back and think, I don't know if I love this idea about the bicycle parking requirements. I don't know if we had that in the previous code.
We did.
Okay, this is fantastic. I like it, the credit of, I thought that was really good. Do we need to have a conversation, I'm not saying we do, I don't know, I'm asking, with golf carts? Is that involved in code or not?
We do not have anything in the code about golf carts.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that a
And-
conversation we need to have, is what I'm asking.
In some of this stuff, Mayor, remember, we started out with the audit, and that was kind of our guardrails.
Right.
So some of this stuff, if you want to, is kind of a bigger issue that, the planning commission, if you wanted to look at golf carts, we could go out and look at golf carts and then amend
Thank you.
this
You've answered the
later on.
question. Okay. Y'all
And-
good with that? Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to have
Yeah.
the confidence, that you tell me what you just told me.
Okay.
If somebody comes up, well, you
Now-
want to talk about golf cart? I like the idea.
You were talking about the bike parking. I will tell you, because that has been in there, and this was before I ever even thought about being on council, but when they redid Wife Saver on Martintown Road, that's probably been 15 years ago, Mr. Godfrey was not happy that the city made him put a bike rack out there. He said, who's going to ride their bike down Martintown Road to get a bucket of chicken? So I can understand the downtown areas and some of the restaurants, sidewalks and stuff, but I don't know. I'm just saying, this is something well before my time on council, but I do remember him complaining, hey, that's extra, $1,500 I had to spend to get a bike rack installed for a Wife Saver on Martintown Road. And I tend to agree with him. I mean, in a sense, nobody's riding their bike there. Now, I could see in the downtown corridor, or can we make that specific to certain areas?
I think it gives me some latitude there.
Okay.
I'm talking from memory, so it may not.
Okay, as long as it does that, yeah.
But one of the things I look at is, what is the residential component around this commercial activity? And if there's residential around it, then, yeah, there's a likelihood of bike travel. And of course, its proximity to the greenway as well.
All right, so my final thing is about overlays. So my question is, the statement is, overlays was a big part of what drove us to where we began this whole process, especially downtown. So, and I think I've answered it on one of them, but I wanted to clarify. It doesn't do us any good to take the word overlay and take it out as a district if we keep everything that was codified by the name of overlay. So the whole point is not just getting the name out, but if we're keeping everything what made the overlay, that the name overlay wasn't the problem. The district overlay district wasn't a problem. It was what the code said of the district. So one thing that I pulled up the old George Avenue code, the one thing that I don't see that I think has been changed is facades, because in the current overlay for George Avenue, it says facades facing George Avenue shall include at least 4 of the following elements, and it lists about A through I. I don't see any of those elements listed under facade in this code, all that. So I guess that got changed, or is that someplace I don't know where?
That would be table, or 6.4.2 on page 85.
I got 6. Page 85.
Yes, sir. And
Where is that?
here is, or actually go back to 84 at 6.4.1. But 6.4.2 gives you the wall detail and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
But this has like so it says facades have to have 4 things: a pediment, a cornice, windows, a recessed entryway, transom windows, moldings, canopy, sign, lighting, sign, branding. Are all those items somewhere in this? 'Cause I'm not saying that's good, I'm just asking. Has some of that been taken out?
Yes.
Perfect, okay, so that's good, okay. So, this is, I guess, so my next thought is, on page 86, talking about orientation, the other challenge with the downtown was, and I really think this is possible, that we have some buildings that somebody may want to at some point tear down, like they did the New Star newspaper. And I get the idea of wanting, I guess, zero, everything to the sidewalk, but it doesn't give us any flexibility if there's a situation maybe it doesn't make sense. And I guess that all parking's got to be in the back when maybe there's a situation where, the Pink Dipper said, I don't know, I guess my mind is the overlay, just to change the name, but we keep everything that was in the overlay, then we really haven't adapted the overlay, because I'm thinking, my concern is future development. So it doesn't do us any good to do this code if we got somebody that's got a great idea that the kind of business we do want, okay, and it doesn't make sense that it is this, and this, versus giving you some flexibility to say, hey, it may make sense in this situation that they don't have to be to the sidewalk and the parking's got to be in the back. That was the whole point when the Main Street folks talked about, we codified, that we said, and it made your job very hard, not you talking about the previous, before Libby, was it's 100 things. It's not, And granted, we want to control, but it makes it to where there's not any. And I'm just thinking, what we learned from Greenville, and here's my point. Greenville built their downtown block by block. And what I'm saying is we have had a code that took the whole downtown as if it was Evans and it was dirt, and they're trying to build a town. We have blocks that we need to be creative to figure out how to make it work. And we have a code that says it's got to do this and this, not saying we may not want that. But I mean, we can talk about blocks. There's a block, one block is just totally different than another one. So that's my big thing that I'm passionate about. Is great that we don't have the word overlay anywhere, but if all we've done is taken the same overlay, just put in this new code, we're in the same conversation that caused this is why this all happened, that the medical bill, Piedmont. And that's why you have that pergola thing to the left, because they made an agreement where parking's on the side. It couldn't be in the back. Well, let's put a structure there that no one ever uses, and it sits under that pergola. So, and then, that's part of why I got on the planning commission, because people didn't get appointed. So, it's very political. So that's my issue.
And I agree with you, and this was, I think, before you, Jen, and David were on here, but we had the gentleman from Sprint that wanted to redo this store up here. However, the code said it had to be against a sidewalk. Well, that's not going to work for traffic in and out. So we need to be able, and I don't know if that's changed, Tommy, or were you on board back then too? But
I'm familiar with it.
yeah, so, here was where our overlays and development code and everything would not allow that gentleman, because he already owns the lot behind it, and all he wanted to do was put a rear facing like the rest of them, and I can understand that.
So what he really wanted to do was he wanted to have a little restaurant in the back there when people
Yeah.
on the Greenway, because we were talking about the east side and the west,
But
There was no flexibility.
right, and the one
So I
thing
don't know
that's
how-
always
I don't know how
come
you
back.
Like that, but that's, I just think.
Well, no, I don't disagree.
You gotta have, because what we learned was block by block.
Well, remember,
This
they
is not
also
block by
said
block.
design review board, which is something we don't have. And it needs to be probably a case-by-case thing for downtown. We define downtown, say, from Forest Avenue to the bridge, or we go block by block by block. But I think that's the only way it's going to get the vision we want, is say, hey, we see what you're trying to do here. Can we do this, this, and this? Now, the other thing, and me and you talked in Greenville a little bit about this, was parking. That's always going to be a challenge with George Avenue. I know we've got the common study back that eventually we'll have to go over, but my idea is let's focus on side street parking. You've got Spring Grove, Pine Grove. There's, like I say, Grace has got a huge parking lot. Maybe they could charge like $1 fee or something and make some money to give to guy. I don't know what, but I think there's other options to make what we want work, but I do think it's a case-by-case basis.
Well, let me say this about parking. Currently, off-street parking is required. In this current, does not require it in the downtown mixed-use one. So, because you want the buildings built property line to property line and increase the walking. So parking and loading from the rear, hopefully that's not an issue we have to deal with, to be quite honest with you. Now, the other thing is and I'm different than a lot of people or a lot of planners, but if there's something in this book that doesn't fit, we always have a variance request. And if it makes sense, our BZA has been good about using common sense when they hear applications. That's another hoop to jump through, I grant you. But it allows the public to have a say on it, and it's not just me deciding in an office somewhere.
I guess another example I was thinking when you were talking to is if the vision is to have the Greenway come into downtown, this would limit retailers having a backside entrance. Is that how that plays out?
I don't think it would stop you from having a back side. It's just the main, if you front along George Avenue, that's where your main door should
But
be.
here's a perfect example. Jackson Square, Cavaliers, in there, and I've got it in my thing, that every storefront has to have a front entrance. Well, so Cavaliers doesn't, for a reason, because they added a bar piece of it. So again, if the development code, if we don't, that's what I'm saying is, that shouldn't have to go through a variance. What I'm saying is, that's what I'm saying is, that's a perfect example. If that had been grandfathered in, then it'd be an issue. I understand, but-
And I disagree, Britt.
Because if they expanded the area, they took something and said, hey, there's a need for a bar area.
Yeah, but I don't know. I disagree. And I'm find myself, sometimes just saying we shouldn't have codes. But I think downtown, I mean, the standard should be that if you've got a downtown district, there's a door fronting the main street on that downtown. And if there's a situation like Cavaliers, that should be an exception that's made. That shouldn't be, code just shouldn't, I mean, that to have a walkable downtown, it would be front entrances facing the main streets. I mean, I'm not so sure you would.
How do we do that to where what is that mechanism for those exceptions where it doesn't necessarily, because then it can get into, I mean, I get the BZA, but that in itself still.
Well, I mean, I guess we could talk about providing more latitude to planning, and I could get behind maybe that, more latitude to planning and development to make those sorts of issues to where that wouldn't be a variance. But I mean, I wouldn't want that to be the I want this. I mean, the standard ought to be.
Again, I'm about options. What I'm saying is, there's some things in here in the code that says, we prefer. So yes, do we want? I love buildings to the sidewalk. I'm not against it. But what I keep hearing and learning is we've got to have, every block is we've got to have some leeway. I don't know what that terminology is, what it is, but it needs to be more than just a BZA, because the BZA are appointed by council. And depending on how things are political and what a person's doing, we just can't do that. We need to have something that gives some type of flexibility in my mind, because I just think we're going to have people getting creative. I mean, who would have thought that we would have an olive oil store next to where it used to be a check cash? So again, that's the kind of business we want. Not that it didn't fit this, but because they aren't building a new building. But what I'm still saying is, I can see there are properties that I could see at some point someone wanting to tear down and put the kind of things we want. And is there some flexibility is what I'm asking.
And I hear exactly what you're saying. And this is something we've been dealing
I don't know what
with.
that looks like, Tommy. I'm just saying.
We'd like to be able to say, yes, we'll accommodate this, but it's on an as-needed basis, because if the next guy comes in, well, you allowed this here, why don't I get that here? And I think that's the problem.
I don't know.
That's it.
David, what do you think?
Honestly, I mean, that's what's going to happen is if we do a case-by-case and we've got developer A coming in, putting in whatever, and we're like, yep, okay, we'll give you an exception for that, that, and that, and then the next one comes in, and maybe it's a business we don't like or whatever, and we're like, well, no, you got to do that. Well, you didn't make him do that, and we get into picking winners and losers, unfortunately. So, I mean, the code's got some structure, but like Kevin said, I'm about maybe giving planning and development a little more leeway, a little more power, because they're appointed by us as well, and, to make some of those decisions. And then if they feel like, hey, this might be controversial, kick it back to us. But I think that might be the better way, because otherwise we're never going to get,
Well, I mean, I think we need to be able to open it up, like you said. If the planning director has the ability to have more leeway on allowing certain things, but, we don't really have a mechanism in place we don't have an architectural review, so once it comes down to what they're.
And current code doesn't give the director any, you got to check every box.
Now, this might be a Kelly question, but the very first, I'm going to refer to the electrical code I use all the time. Very first page says this interpretation is to be made by qualified people. I guess technically I'm qualified, but anyway, but at the very end it says, ultimate decision is to the AHJ, which is the authority having jurisdiction. So no matter how I interpret that code, Mark Timmerman or Laddie could come up and say, no, Eric, I read it this way, so this is the way you have to do it. Now, I don't know if we can put an excerpt in the very front of this that say all interpretations and decisions go through our planning director. He would be the authority having jurisdiction.
But that's a lot of power.
What's that?
But that's a lot of power on one person.
Well, and actually, the interpretation,
Yeah.
that's already up there. It gives
Okay.
me the
So he has
the
that.
authority to make the interpretation, but I'm going by, okay, what is in the book? How do I interpret this in the book?
Correct.
And I've got to be able to hang my hat on a reasonable explanation for the decision I made. If it's something that fits, I can, but if it's not, yeah, I've got to have something to hang my hat on.
Well, that's where it has got to be, there are municipalities and consultants that can give, I mean, again, I don't know how you need to word it, what that looks like. I'm just saying, if we vote on this just like it is, all we've done is taken the word overlay out of downtown. And we're in the same, we'll put you in the same predicament, 100 things, and you have no say. So we aren't the expert here to tell you, I'm just saying, we need to figure out how do you make it work? Because I'm with you, I'm not trying to, open everything, but I'm just, for us to think with this downtown that we have, and it is all over the place, that as this thing continues, if there's not some type of flexibility, I just think we're gonna.
Well, I mean, if it's something that might be preventing something, I mean, again, like we said, block by block, I mean, Tommy, can you always bring it to us, or does it have to go to the BZA?
Has to go to the BZA, that's in state law. But there may be, and this is a Kelly question, you could put some weasel words in there, so to speak, that in the downtown mixed use one, discretion is design, or setbacks and stuff is, the planning director has discretion based on, if he finds it meets basically the intent of the code.
The
I'm
bottom
going
line
back.
is, if the director starts going down a path that we don't like, guess what? We have mechanism, okay? He's
Yes, sir.
appointed by the mayor. So what I'm getting at is, so I don't think we need a carte blanche, but for it not to give you some flexibility, I just don't see it. I mean, I'm not gonna back off on that. I don't know what it looks like, but there's gotta be some flexibility.
And I can get behind that to a degree, but at the same point, I mean, we also have to provide him with the standards that we want for that and say, these are the standards. And if we have to build in some reasonable flexibility for him, I mean, we can have that discussion. And again, I don't know what that looks like either, but I also, just to go back to what you said, I don't think it's I mean, this is not keeping the overlay. I mean, we've already, two examples. The parking is completely different than what the overlays were. The design standard for the buildings have been relaxed on what the standards were. I mean, I think to say.
Let me ask you this, is Jackson Square, do you think that is a good development?
Yeah, but
But what I'm saying, that Jackson Square would not have, Jackson Square would not be able to be built prior to the code in 2007.
correct.
That's what I'm saying. Because there was
Well, what I'm asking is, you keep saying that it's just removing the overlays, it hasn't changed anything. So what in the code currently, and that's what I'm trying to find out, what in the code currently would prevent the kind of development that you're wanting to see?
In the current code.
No, the new code.
I know, everything in here is in this new
It's
code.
not.
Yeah, it is, I'm looking at it, I just asked them. The only thing except I think so.
Parking's been changed, the building design has been relaxed on
I agree
it.
with you, parking
And the
is good.
parking, the building design has been relaxed on it. So I mean, there
parking was
are
the biggest
changes.
Zero setback.
Well, there is zero setback, and again, I think that's a conversation we need to have as a
Right.
council, not to say that we make it built project by project, what does the setback need to be? If we think that that setback's wrong, we as a council need to say that setback needs to be this.
Again, I did a lot of prep before this. I need to see this. I want to, okay, and I hadn't had a chance to do it tonight, so that's why we're not rushing to vote on this tomorrow, so I want to know, we need to see, maybe me and Tommy just sit down, if everything we check off, except maybe one thing is still in this code, that we hadn't changed, is what I'm trying to tell you. Because this is the downtown, this piece right here. So if everything that's on here, except I agree with the parking, thank you, that's good, but if everything else is still in here, we've only changed one thing and changed the names, what I'm saying. And it may all be changed. I don't think it is.
No, it's not all changed. I mean, I think there are standards in there, but my point is being, if there, I don't know that the answer as I see it is, we keep the standards effectively the same. We just give the planning director or something else the ability to do it. I think if that's the case, we as a council need to have a discussion to say that if we don't think that the current setback is right, this is what the setback needs to be. Not we're going to keep the setback the same, but we're going to give Tommy the ability to override it, or because, you know, he's an employee of city council, so he serves at the will of the mayor. I mean, I think that it's a matter of having those conversations, which I don't think we just need to do about downtown development. I mean, I'm open to having that. I think we need to have it on mass grading and clear cutting and some of those historic preservation, some of the things that still really aren't covered here. But that's a conversation and standards that council needs to come up with and set forth. And you know, those are going to be, and I'm not going to get into those deeply, I'll just make those kind of a overarching comment. Those are things that I don't necessarily see in this, but I also don't know that, I mean, we had discussions in the committee about some ways to address that. Those are bigger issues that I think the council needs to, whether it's in, you know, we accept it as it is and then and have a task list or put together a committee that's working on continued enhancements as far as those go. But I want to be careful not to say that we're going to either keep the standards the same and give somebody power to override them, or if either we need to have the standards what they are and you go through the variance process to do them, we just have the standards right.
But that's what I'm saying is, that's the problem. You have the code was done in 2007. The city today is different than that. So we're trying to, I'm with that, but that's what I'm saying. I'm not against the idea of, I think it looks good to have a building on the front. But does that give us, I don't know, in 5 years or 10 years, I just can't see not having some type of flexibility in the code. That's what I'm saying, because we don't know what could come in the future. We're already seeing it now. I'm with you. I hear what you're saying. I don't have a problem. The problem is that we have made it to where that's all you can do. And I just think that doesn't give us any leeway.
Mayor, and if I can,
yeah, stirring the pot.
with the now good discussion, but the really the setback is not in the design guidelines. They're over here in Article 4, where you have a maximum setback of 5 feet. Right. And that's where that issue comes from. That's not building design. That's not anything. You know, if you think that you should be able to set it back further, you know, you could change it. You don't have to have a maximum setback at all. But that's where I think listening to y'all talk about the building and the sidewalk is where the issue's at.
So quick question, in the downtown area, and I'm going to point 2 businesses out because they're the only ones that I feel like should have a further back setback, the Sprint and the Circle K. Are they zone GC? Do we have a different setback for them, or is downtown just, nope, you can only be 5 foot back? Because that's just not going to work if they want to expand. Those are the only 2 businesses I can think of offhand, Tommy.
And I've been in discussions with Sprint. Sprint has a recommendation for y'all, and on the code. Circle K, I talked to them about a year ago, and both of them are watching for this development code. One is they're both downtown mixed use one, but one is they'll be allowed by special exception, but they are going to need some variances for maximum building setback and that type of thing. It just doesn't work for a gas station. And we did that with QT. We did that with 2 Parkers. It's not just the downtown district that has the maximum building setback that comes into play.
All right, so one question. So they're going to have to get a variance through the VZA.
And a special exception.
Okay. Yes, now, let's assume the BZA votes it down. Can they then appeal to us?
No, sir.
No, they can't.
It goes to circuit court.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, and Britton, one other thing too, and when you were the chair of the Planning Commission, you remember coming to us and remember all the fights we had with the former mayor about getting the sign ordinance passed. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. Was it a lot better? Yeah. Have we still been dealing with some repercussions for it even under your administration, yes. So, I mean, no matter, this is kind of like anything else we do. This is a starting point. It is a lot better than what it was. And I understand what you're saying, too. I mean, after we walk downtown Greenville, I wish I could, Jason, if you got all the money and want to develop it, we're going to show you what we want. But unfortunately, the market's going to dictate some of that. And, I mean, it's not going to be perfect. We're going to have to work, with Tommy and the BZA to get that vision. But I think everybody's on board with what we want to do. It's just how do we get there? I mean, because honestly, I'm excited if Sprint and Circle K want to redo their stores. Because if Sprint doesn't, if Andy may just sell it and say, you know what, then it's going to become a lottery store. Probably won't even sell gas, take the gas pumps up. So we need to work with who's captive and let the process work out. I think the parking thing was the biggest thing that I kept hearing my first 4 years was we could deal with the development code. It's just the overlay and the development code. But a lot of that was due to the parking and some of the design standards, which I think a lot of that has been fixed in this. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I'm not a developer. I have to defer to Jason or, whoever. But I do think this is a step in the right direction. And I'm curious to hear what these guys have to say, if they'll come to the public hearing, some of the other people, because, I mean, y'all know better than us. And, we're just here to take input. But I do believe that this, with the work that's been going on, I mean, this work has been going on for 3-4 years. Is it perfect? No, but I do think it's a step in the right direction.
There's a subdivision in Bluffton, and there's a lot of money down there. This is this puts Hammond's Ferry penance, okay? Unbelievable. And somebody said, you know what, there's a gas station in the middle of this subdivision, and I can assure you they have a very strong design plan. So go look at it. So Jenny and I went down there, the Hilton Head, and we stopped in Bluffton, went through this subdivision. I rode around this thing. And I called him out back and said, I can't find the gas station. He said, no, it's there. And we went back, and sure enough, they had a gas station in the middle of this planned community that I can assure you had a review, but they had it done in a way to where it was very attractive, where you almost couldn't see it. Now, granted, I know the Sprints, it's about exposure and all that, but what I'm saying is, if that's a situation where, if you had a code that says, well, this is all it's going to be, instead of saying, what I'm saying is, it doesn't do us any good. We need to be willing to sit down, and Tommy has, one of the reasons why we wanted to hire him is what he's done as a director with developers and business owners is phenomenal. It's a change of atmosphere, fantastic. But that needs to continue, and what I'm saying is, when we continue to build downtown and develop it, I'm just saying we have got to, there needs to be some flexibility. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm just saying there's got to, I don't know how we word it, I don't know what we do it, but I think I don't think we're against, I think we're all saying that.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Yeah, I don't want, Kevin, it's like, I don't want to get in and say, it needs to be 5 feet, the window 30, that pull my fingernails out. That's not my job, okay? Our job is to say, this is the vision of what we need, and we need smart people to figure out how you write it.
Well, let me ask you this. If Tommy, you've got a better pulse on the developers of the gas stations and the bigger businesses. Have they been pretty good about, hey, this is kind of the design we'd like to see, or do they fight you tooth and nail? Because, I mean, we could go, let's say they want to redo that corner right there. Make it disappear. Maybe we don't have big, bright awnings or, big, bright signs, just do a brick sign or something. I think a lot of that could be done through design. And Tommy, you would know better than us. I mean, because I look at like Lowe's. Our Lowe's here is built different than any other one. You go to the one in Bobby Jones, one on Peach Orchard, Aiken, they're all different. Ours looks good. It's nice brick. Same thing with Walmart. So, I mean, obviously these guys are willing to work with us on our design standards, aren't they?
Well, remember, those are in a planned development. So there's some guidelines in there that triggers it.
But if they want to tear it down and start over, that's what I'm saying.
And I think that's what's going to happen with those two.
I think there's not going to be some of that in some businesses. I don't know. I don't know what that is. And that's going to probably be the minority and not the majority, okay? But at the same point, if there's not some,
And I know what you mean, because downtown's so different. If you take what's the house that's a restaurant now? I can't even think of the name of it. Yeah, McNeely's. That looks totally different than the North Augusta Motel right beside it, and then Waffle House right beside it, and then University Hospital, and then you go up a block.
Because Tommy had the flexibility and was able to be creative within
Correct.
the code to make that.
And I think he could
happen when everybody else before him said no. So that's what I'm saying.
No, but I think he can still do that under the current code, correct? You'll have some flexibility to do that.
Yeah, I need somewhere to hang my hat, and you know, I have to be careful of, and I
These are
wish
not
Kelly was here.
interpretation. I'm saying it needs to be more than interpretation in some situations, is what I'm saying. Because he's interpreting now, but he's still
Right.
got to go by what's in the paper.
But
Oh, I know.
If what's in paper doesn't allow him interpretation to make it, that's the issue, I think.
Well, I'll put it to you this way, and again, maybe I'm in the minority here, but we have a building official that works right downstairs. Nobody cares what he does as long as everybody's safe. You know, he has that authority as a building official to make those calls. And I don't understand why our planning director can't have some leeway on that as well. I mean, again, you know, Tommy's got to interpret whatever, but I know, Kevin, you had mentioned, I mean, I'm open to giving him more flexibility to make some of those decisions. I mean, you can't, I mean, I just don't know what the answer is, because we either got to give him the flexibility or we just scrap the whole code and then.
No, we're not,
well,
I'm
Yeah.
not saying that. I'm not against.
what were you talking about in Greenville with a review board? I
Some
wasn't there,
places have design review
So I don't know
boards.
what you were talking about because I wasn't
Oh,
there.
well, there was somebody, I don't know if it was in Greenville, but one of the
okay.
people we were talking to, I mean, they have design review boards where if something new is coming in, it has to go through a series of architectural reviews or whatever before it goes to the planning commission. Is that?
not really. It's, those architectural review boards are a separate entity over here. And I wouldn't recommend that y'all go there. That is, just like the mayor said,
Yeah.
about variance request, that's another layer. That's another public hearing. That is another board that has their opinions on how to interpret the design standards.
And I understand what the mayor's saying, and I'm not disagreeing with you, but it's how do we go about getting that done where we have some say-so as a council? I don't think we can. It's like a checks and balances. We have to trust that the BZA and planning and development members are doing what's in our interest. And I think that's more of maybe we need to have another conversation with the planning commission. We had one, I guess it's been about a year now, hadn't it, Tommy, since we all met?
Yeah,
And
I'm with you, but that still doesn't, yeah, that, we need to do that regardless. I'm with you on that. So,
Basically,
giving you some guidance, but we're not giving you an answer.
what I'm hearing, and I could be wrong, is that my marching orders is to reach out to our consultants and say, okay, give me some weasel words that will give me some discretion. Am I right or wrong in hearing that? I'm just,
Weasel word.
well, I call them weasel words, and, you know, some wiggle room for the, yes, discretion.
I think that's a start, to see what that looks like.
yeah.
Right.
We're not, that's what we're doing tonight, just talking. And that's, again, Jen's point is we don't want to rush through this. This is an important part, and,
I think we do try to get some more developers and would-be people to give us their input, and I think that'll help us, because we could sit here and argue all night, because at the end of the day, we're not developing downtown. Yes, we have a vision. I have a vision. Jen has one. I'm sure you have one. We all have a vision of what that's supposed to be, but we're not the ones physically doing it. We need to hear from the people that would be physically doing it.
yeah.
And I think
I think
we should just kind of,
We've done
until we
something.
hear from them, because like I say, we can sit here and beat our heads
Well,
against the
I
desk all
think
day.
That's coming up, that's not till September, so in the meantime, let's start with the consultants. And, you know, and have them, I mean, we paid them a lot of money. They've done amazing work, but we are not the only municipality in the state of South Carolina as council's having this conversation. I'm telling you, it's not. And there are communities that figured out a way to do it. We need to get, if we get Knox White down here, I'll do it. No, but there's gotta be a way to adhere to a standard and good code that doesn't hamstring us when the opportunity arises that we say, wow, this is positive. And I don't see that right now. That's me. Only 7 votes, but that's where I am right now. So, all right, everybody good with that? Marching orders for Tommy? Okay. All right. Guess what? That's all I have. I'm gonna shut up. There's no y'all to ask the questions. All right. Tommy, word tonight. Directors are mad. I can't lose. Okay.
All right, hope you're all ready for the second half of the meeting.
We're ready for it.
All right.
Why are we playing this for this exact reason?
So really 2 items. The first is I've had some inquiries from council about the boat dock project, and for Councilman McCauley, that's the boat dock at the amphitheater, along with the overlook project that we're talking about. You know, we've put that out for bid. We've received a number of bids associated with that project, but one of the things that's happened concurrently with that is we've now moved the amphitheater seating project and the greenway, or the amphitheater bathroom and green room project into the planning and engineering phase of that design now. And so after consulting with some of the construction savvy folks here on the council, and also within our own staff, what I'd like to do is recommend a change in procurement strategy. So what we've done to date is go through a RFP process to find the low bidder to do the dock project. And the dock in particular is a very technical project and requires some certain expertise there to get that done. And so ultimately, based on the timing of the other aspects of the project, is what I'd like to do is strike the current bids that we have and then go back out and rebid the project as a request for qualification, not request for proposal, and wrap up all elements of Riverside Village into one larger proposal. So that would include the boat dock, that would include the overlook, that would include the amphitheater seating, and that would include the green room / bathrooms. What that allows us to do then is have one contractor and have a much more integrated approach going down the hill from the amphitheater all the way down to the boat dock itself. And we would also prioritize the boat dock as the first element to go in because the design and engineering for that has been completed. And so we don't want to wait. We want to make sure that as we go into boating season next year that the boat dock is in place. It's in place for Ironman. It's in place for our boaters, and that the amphitheater will follow, if you will. But at least we've got one integrator of all of those projects going forward. And so instead of the low bid, it would be a request for qualifications for a firm to come in and do an integrated approach to all the things associated with the amphitheater and the boat dock. So with that, I'll pause for any questions, but really what I'm looking for from the council is kind of a verbal guidance that you would be okay with that. I would still have to come back to council for a council action to fund, number one, to award a contract, and then also the funding mechanisms associated with those projects. Some of that's going to be grant funding, and some of that's going to be ARPA funding as well. So this will not be the last time we'll have this discussion here with council, but I wanted to make sure that council was on board with the change to overall procurement strategy before I brought that to you in a formal setting. And so I'll pause for any questions from council.
And the RFQ is what we did with the public station.
It is, sir. The RFQ would be a request for qualifications, and that way there would be a panel to evaluate the various firms that would put in for this, figure out what their subs are, have some discussion about how the boat dock is going to be put into the water and the things associated with that. And so it's a much more iterative process to figure out who really is the best integrator of this entire project.
Makes a lot of sense.
Well, no,
so I'm all for it.
Yeah, that's huge because, I think you're going to find more qualified bidders. And the thing I spoke with Jim earlier about is if you get more than one or two contractors involved, you're going to have a lot of this going on. Oh, no, that was his part, not my part, this part.
All to be uniform.
Yeah, it would all be uniform, and the thing I like is we can roll from one project to the next instead of getting on the books and waiting 6 months for the next people to clear up. So, Jim, I'm all for it.
It'd be much more cohesive. But one question I did have was, are we also addressing the potential of the additional seating that we talked about in this one?
Yes, Councilman, we are.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
where the tree had been in the amphitheater, that element, that seating element is part of what's under design and engineering now that you all just awarded to Cranston.
Okay.
And that would be part of the general contractor through the RFQ process, that would be part of the project.
Well, then by all means, we need to do the RFQ.
Are we going to put the shades in that as well, too? I know we hadn't talked about that, but I don't know if y'all agree or disagree, but I know that was talked about early on, like the triangular shade things.
Councilman, that's not under the current scope that's under design and engineering, and we can certainly look at that as a follow-on action, but the
If we
current
could.
design and engineering is strictly for adding seating and then the restroom and green room capability.
I mean, if we could look at that as like a line item, I don't know how y'all feel, but, there's a lot of people that say, yeah, it'd be nice if we had some shade.
I think you've got enough, everybody, for the most part, enough consensus?
Yes, I would agree.
I have enough information to be dangerous, so yes, so we'll move forward on that procurement option. And then last but not least, since I see Lee is still sitting up there, I would like to, we'll do it a little more formally tomorrow, but we would like to set the time for 5 p.m. on this coming Thursday, for Third Thursday, to do our initial flag raising here on the flag poles. And that'll involve Marine Corps League and the American Legion. 5 p.m.
And we'll get something out so we can pass out on social media.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
That's great. Jen's put a lot of work into that. So I appreciate your efforts on that.
That's all Tom Zeeser and his crew making that actually happen. So I appreciate their efforts to get us
Tom's
to.
life expectancy has just grown of about 10 years, so he no longer has to climb through that little window, keep himself real trim, and propel up the stuff up there to change that flag. So very good. Okay. All right. So I don't have any reflections or announcements. Or anybody else for anything else at this point? Y'all good? All right. We stand adjourned.